There's something really appealing about a big, powerful dragon. But I won't go on at length because I wouldn't want this intro to drag on. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. I hope this weekend finds you well. We are here for another installment of Core 2021 spoiler fun. And today we are going to talk about the Pandemonium Dragon. I mean, that's not really his name. You can see on the screen that his name is really Terror of the Peaks. Not a shabby name. So, what are we looking at? We're looking at 2 red and 3 for a 5/4 flying dragon. The first ability on the card says, spells your opponent's cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. That's pretty interesting because under older wordings of cards, this would be something actually more like loses 3 life, right? Like this is a different scenario where they're actually paying that as an additional cost. That is a very bizarre way of doing things in one way. Also, it is a departure from dealing damage, right? Like this actually kind of feels more like a black aligned ability, really, when you look at it under the surface. But I've noticed that there has been a decided shift with the color pie in recent times, but it definitely feels like there's a strong shift. And by strong shift, I just mean a very noticeable shift, not that there has been like a massive shift. So basically the color pie is the way that Magic the Gathering divides up what colors are good at what. You know what I mean? Like what the specialties of each color are, what their secondary abilities can be, and then the stuff that also defines them in terms of their weaknesses, what they lack. For example, red and black are traditionally very, very bad at dealing with enchantments. That is the biggest problem for them. Both those colors share that sort of scenario. So those are the kind of defining weaknesses, right? But then there were other abilities like drawing cards, for example, that seem to be proliferating out into more colors than before. Blue used to be mostly the domain of card draw, with a little bit of card draw here and there in other colors, but under very specific circumstances. And it seems like overall they've widened up the field in terms of how each color gets card draw, which makes sense when you think about the fact that cards are one of the most fundamental resources in the game. But either way, what I'm driving at is that there has been a number of kind of color pie tweaks here and there, the card draw being the most noticeable amongst them. But this sort of an ability tying into red now, as well as black, in terms of like the cost of life, that sort of thing does make sense. Red and black are ally colors, but it is just interesting to note, as somebody who's seen tens of thousands of different Magic cards in my lifetime, you notice patterns, right? And you start to pick up on overall design philosophy that Wizards has. And it's interesting when we see shifts like this. So that is the first of the like sentence style abilities. Technically, I guess the first ability on the creature's flying, but whenever I talk about abilities, I tend to just mean the big chunks of text that have more interesting stuff going on than just the keywords. So the last ability on the card is whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. And that, if you're wondering, is where the one-sided Pandemonium concept comes in, and we'll get to that when we get to that card. But first, I want to take a step backwards and talk about the targeting of the Terror of the Peaks and how you essentially pay for it. Like if you trifle with the dragon, then you pay for it, right? That's the concept behind it. So you've got that sort of thing. Feels like kind of an offshoot of the Thunderbreak region, which was a dragon from the Tarkir block. Tarkir block had a ton of dragons. That's why we actually have more green dragons now, honestly. Every color got to mess around with dragons when it came to Tarkir, which was a different vibe. I like it. I like the differentiators that make particular planes of existence feel like they have their own identity. And having a crazy amount of dragons is cool on multiple levels. First of all, dragons just speak to something deep and primal within us, you know? They're of such a scope and power that we stand no chance against them. If you think of yourself as a regular person, what chance would you have against a dragon in real life? Virtually none. On top of being super powerful, like physically, they have breath weapons that can range from lightning to fire, poison breath, all this kind of crazy stuff, right? You've got that, and then some are also spellcasters. Like dragons would be something that would just destroy us. And so there is a joy in thinking of yourself as a planeswalker who can summon up these powerful beasts who just obey your will, right? And the Thunderbreak Regent ties into that as well. He's so powerful that he protects over the other dragons. His ability is whenever a dragon you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, Thunderbreak Regent deals 3 damage to that player. So you can see there's a pretty big parallel between the two abilities. There are some clear distinctive differences in that the Thunderbreak Regent doesn't make it an additional cost. It's essentially like a penalty trigger, whereas the situation with the dragon that we've got right now, the Terror here, is one where he actually says, no, you're going to have to pay life as part of casting the spell. And in a lot of scenarios, the end result is going to be the same. You do something to get rid of the dragon, and you're down 3 life. Whether you took 3 damage or paid 3 life, on the surface, this is going to operate in a very similar way most of the time. But it definitely is interesting to notice that it is a specific cost. Now, when we turn to the other ability, obviously the non-flying ability of the Terror of the Peaks, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. That, to me, like, because I'm so old school, it made me think of the card Pandemonium, but a one-sided Pandemonium, which is nuts. Now, Pandemonium is 1 red and 3 for an enchantment that says, whenever any creature comes into play, that creature's controller may choose to have it deal damage equal to its power to target creature or player. Flavor text says, if we cannot live proudly, we die so. It's a pretty good quote, actually. So the idea behind this is anytime a creature comes out, it gets to do its damage to any other creature in play. Now, this obviously isn't identical because it is the Terror dealing damage as opposed to the Pandemonium. So if you had something like, if the dragon was enchanted with an enchantment that said, this creature can't deal damage, then putting out a bunch of creatures wouldn't do anything in that scenario. But if they came into play with Pandemonium, or onto the battlefield, I guess if you want to use your fancy new kid lingo. Anyways, with Pandemonium, it's the creatures themselves that are dealing with damage. So there is a distinct difference, but somewhat most of the time, like the exact same scenario with the life loss and damage we just talked about, in most cases, it's going to play out to be the same end result. However, if you do have creatures that had Death Touch or other triggered abilities, then the Pandemonium could actually pay off even more. But Pandemonium obviously has the downside that all your opponent's creatures can do the same thing. It's kind of like bringing the ability to attack other players' creatures for like 1 turn. When a creature comes out, he can attack 1 other creature. That's kind of what it's like. And the artwork really ties well into the concept of Pandemonium, because that's what it would be like. Things just constantly getting summoned into existence, running around, going all crazy. Look at the face down in the bottom left-hand corner of the card, just going like, ah! He looks like, I don't know, because it seems like goblins versus like elves, and everybody has kind of like blue face paint makeup on or blue on their garments. Like there's a theme of blue to the defenders, it looks like. And the ones that are surging around it are all Mog goblins. But then you just have this head leaning in. It's almost like he's taking a selfie, like, yeah, check this out, bro. Now, Pandemonium isn't the only card with this effect. It was just the first one that I thought of, and pretty much the oldest effect. In terms of probably a closer parallel to the dragon, looking at Warstorm Surge would make more sense. And that is 1 red and 5. So bear in mind, this casting cost is higher than the dragon. 1 red and 5. And it says, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. And then it says, listen to the roar, feel the thunder. The Immersturm shows its approval with every bolt of lightning. That is an absolutely insane concept for a card. I mean, if you look at it, these guys are like lightning berserkers, you know? Like that's intense. And the artwork is fantastic on this card as well. This thing is insane. This is absolutely nutty, man. 5 mana for a 5/4 flyer that if your opponent does anything to it, which they're desperately going to want to do, they have to pay an extra 3 life to cast the spell. So even if the spell ends up like being countered or in some other way doesn't get to happen, they still have to pay that life. And then every time another creature comes out, it just does, like, it does damage to any target based on it. You can have planeswalkers with it too? What? Oh my god. And this thing's not even legendary. Oh my god. This is so insane. It's a one-sided 5/4 flying Pandemonium that punishes your opponent for trying to mess with it. This is so crazy. I love it. All right, my friends, let me know what you think in the comments below. I will talk to you guys tomorrow when I'm going to drop a Teferi lore video. Thanks for being here. See you guys then.